Hello, I'm Father Louis Scurti with Friends of the Word, the Weekday Word. We thank you for joining us. Today my guest is Jeanne Michaud. Welcome back, Jeanne.
Thank you. It's nice to be back.
Jeanne was on a previous show, and we opened the topic of slavery, and we're going to continue that. And the focus of today and slavery is consumerism. I have a question for you. How much did you pay for your coffee this morning? That coffee could possibly have been grown in slave territory. The coffee beans could have been brought to the United States through the blood, sweat, and tears of slaves. And that's what Jeanne's going to talk about today. Consumerism and slavery. Substantiate what I just said about coffee.
There are many countries that are good. Their soil is good for producing coffee. Unfortunately, they're mostly in third world countries. And a lot of the coffee grown in third world countries is grown by slaves, including children. And it is our greed, really, our wanting to get a good product for as little money as possible. And along the way, the people that are involved with the production of the coffee, if they can have the coffee produced, grown, and harvested by slaves, then they make more money to sell. And the companies that deliver the coffee to us, of course, will get the product at a lesser price, and they can charge more and make a profit.
And it just
it's called the supply chain.
Okay, I just want to quote something from the documents of Vatican II on human trafficking and slavery, and then I want you to tell the audience how you got involved with this topic. During Vatican II, the Catholic Church affirmed its historic concern about forced labor, stating that slavery, prostitution, the selling of women and children, and disgraceful working conditions where people are treated as mere tools for profit rather than as free and responsible persons are infamies and an affront to fundamental values rooted in the very human nature of the person. So we're dealing with this topic because it is sanctity we're dealing with. It's human being. And I don't care what faith you are part of, but when a human being is denigrated to the point where she or he is enslaved, so we in a non-third world country could benefit by a cup of coffee or a piece of jewelry or furniture or even clothing, we're contributing to that, aren't we?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
And that's hard to take.
But I think a lot of us still don't understand what happens. And I'll speak for myself. We tend to like to wear blinders. And I became aware of this when I participated in a 28-week program at St. Mary's Parish in Pompton Lakes called Just Faith. And it is a program that helps people explore all of the aspects of social justice. And at the end of the program, all the participants chose an area where they particularly were interested. And I was interested in women's issues. So we formed a group, and the first thing we had to do was come up with a topic within that realm. And so that we all could be passionate about it. And we came up with human trafficking. We focused on the trafficking of women and children because it's a women's rights group, but really it encompasses everyone on the planet. So that's how I got involved.
That's great. That's great. And it's important for our audience to know that the parish, St. Mary's, sponsored this, but your parish might sponsor the same thing, and if it's not, and you want to develop a course or an organization like this, start it in your own parish. Talk to your parish priest, your parish council members, and introduce it, right? Because some parishes may not have. But I think most parishes do a lot of social outreach and ministry. This is specific to St. Mary's, and they're Franciscans.
They're Franciscans.
The Franciscans have a special place in God's world, I really think. Okay, slavery has been around, and Jeanne's going to continue talking about this. Slavery has been around centuries. St. Paul talked about slaves, and he wasn't anti-slave. It was an institution of the Roman world, And so slaves existed during the time of Jesus, slaves existed during the time of Paul, and well into, well, regrettably, modern day. Supposedly it was abolished in the 2 centuries ago. But and one of the famous people that we know, an American, Saint Keteri Tekakwitha, was a slave. She was born in 1656. She was an Algonquin in northern New York, and she became infatuated with the Black Robes, which are the Jesuits who were teaching and preaching there. Eventually, she became a Christian, and because she became a Christian, she was cut off from the social group of the Algonquins and became a slave. Eventually, she was martyred as a slave. She was martyred because of her love of God's people and love of human beings. And at age 23, she took a vow of virginity, which was a sure sign of death because she was withdrawing from the ongoing life of the Algonquin tribes. She fasted severely, and eventually her life was taken, and she became one of the saints that we have as an American model of anti-slavery, of strength of women's values, and of fighting against the tide of society. And that's what you're doing here. You're fighting against the tide of an underpinning of society, that lower level that we don't surface too much.
Right. It's very hard to identify where these things are happening in a lot of cases because it is so secretive. And people really don't want to recognize it. But there's many ways that each of us can get involved, mostly in raising awareness and paying attention ourselves. We can. There are ways to potentially identify when you see a person that might be enslaved.
Tell the audience. That's an interesting fact.
We actually have here, this is a restaurant worker. So in some of our restaurants, and this has happened locally, that there have been arrests made, this is a slave in a local restaurant doing, it looks like kitchen duty.
He may look like many of the people you see every day.
Absolutely. So there are signs, and there is a national hotline number that can be called if you think you see somebody that might be a slave. You won't get them into trouble, and you turn over that feeling to experts.
Okay, so I go into a restaurant, look in the kitchen, and I see someone who looks like this. How do I know he's a slave and just not a person working in the kitchen?
Well, we typically, I don't think, would see somebody in the kitchen, but they could be a server, a bus person, and they typically may not make eye contact. They may not speak English, which is not necessarily a sign that they're a slave. They may be bruised. They may seem fearful. There are those kinds of things. There are some things that we wouldn't know, like they can't travel on their own. They may be bused with a group of people to arrive in a van for the start of their shift. They may not have a bank account. They may not have credentials, even though they may have come into the country if they're not native to our country with a passport. Sometimes they're met at an airport, and the people take their credentials. They say that they need them to give to somebody, and they'll keep them safe, but then they're here, and they haven't entered the country legally.
And they've slowly entered the slave market.
Exactly.
Fascinating.
Exactly. A lot of, we have some people that come here illegally and get enslaved, but there are people that come here legally. Filipino women, a lot of them, are contracted to come and be domestics in homes in the U.S.
And that sounds right.
And they have a salary that they're supposed to be making and whatever, and they do that because their families are suffering in the Philippines. And they come here, their documentation is taken. They have a visa, a legal visa. Their documentation is taken, and then they're enslaved in the home. And they have, a lot of them don't speak English.
This topic is vast.
Yes.
And I want you to come back again for another segment.
I'd love to.
Give our audience the phone number that they should call if they indeed suspect anyone. You can just hold that up and read.
It's supposed to, it is a little bit easy to remember. 1-888-373-7888.
Great. Thank you very much, Jeanne. Appreciate it. And thank you for being part of Friends of the Word, the Weekday Word. This has been Father Louis Scurti with Jeanne Michaud. God bless you, and pass this on to your family and friends.